Hello and welcome to Qtr Time podcast. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P. And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed. A big welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. This is our second Twitter space of the Commonwealth Games, and we'll be obviously discussing all the bits and bobs that have happened over the last few days. So just a few housekeeping bits before we start. This space is being recorded for any netball fans who aren't able to listen. Listeners, if you want to send in some questions or any comments, the lovely Lucy G will be monitoring the hashtag, which is B2022 netball. So do share your thoughts, comments, musings, unpopular netball opinions, etc. And we will try and shout out as many of them as possible. As always, the athletes we're talking about are real people who have real feelings and may also listen to this live or on playback. So if you're commenting anything, please do bear this in mind and do be respectful at all times. Coming up today, we will be discussing the placings from today, highlighting some of the key pool matches from the last couple of days before looking ahead to the semi-finals tomorrow and some predictions. But firstly, Luce, what have you thought of the matches so far?
Oh, mate, where to begin? I don't even know where to start. Like, you obviously can't look past the match between Jamaica, Australia, New Zealand, England, obviously making them top their pools respectively. Those games absolutely blew my tiny mind. I've also been super impressed with Wales in particular. I think they have shown such resilience on court that I don't think we've necessarily seen from them as strongly as we have in previous years. And also today, the Uganda-South Africa game. Oh, that was so spicy, and it's absolutely just made my heart swell to see Uganda take that win. Absolutely sensational.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've summed it up really well there, Luce. It's been a fantastic day of all the placings and everything. But I'm going to come to you, Camilla, you first. What have you made of the games so far? What's been your highlights?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, there've been so many, haven't there? I think that it's given us everything that we've wanted. You know, we've seen the best in the world on the main stage. We've seen the underdogs hit the stage. We've seen up and coming talent. We've seen everything and more. And I think that everyone will be, you know, totally pleased with the amount of entertainment they've had. I mean, I've not been to the arena, but I've heard the DJ. And I mean, if you're in the arena, you guys, I'm sure, will be able to vouch for this. It sounds like an absolute rave up in there on a daily basis. So that seems like an incredible experience. But I just think it's such an amazing, this sounds so cliche, but it's such an amazing advert for our sport on every level. Yes, there are huge differences and disparities. I know that's something we're going to talk about in terms of, you know, the top nations with the lower nations, which is something that we really want to look at. But what I don't think we can get past is how, you know, we've just seen Uganda take 5th spot. So, you know, we've seen Malawi take 7th spot. Like these are all steps in world netball that are they're incremental and so important for our game. So, you know, whilst we look at those big differences, there is absolute huge stories, not to mention the Jamaican amazing victory over Australia, you know, making history to beat them for the first time ever at a Commonwealth Games. I mean, I just think we're absolutely spoiled at the moment with what we've got on our screens. You know, not to say, you know, with the Lionesses, what the football did the other week. I mean, we are just so spoiled at the moment and loving every single moment of it.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, I just don't want it to end, to be honest with you. I can't believe that Sunday's the last day. It's going to be such a letdown. And Karen, I'll come to you next. I don't know if you've managed to get to the arena yet or you're coming this weekend.
Yeah, I was there all last weekend. It was absolutely fabulous. I was there Saturday and Sunday. The atmosphere in the arena was electric. The DJ is spot on, by the way. The DJ's got it going on. And yeah, the fans, everybody's just cheering for netball, I think. And, you know, it's great to be able to watch it at home and know what it's like to be in that arena. And and the importance that the fans are playing in some of these games. I think we probably heard about 80% of the crowd cheering on Jamaica yesterday for that momentous win. So we're expecting more of the same, I think, for the semi-finals tomorrow. It's going to be exciting. I am there tomorrow for the second semi-final, and then for the bronze medal and final on Sunday. So really excited to get down there.
Amazing. Yeah, packed weekend of netball. And anyone who has been up to the arena, we'd love to hear your thoughts about what you thought of the games, which matchups you liked. Use the hashtag B2022 netball. And so, Lindsay, I'm going to come to you with our first big question and talking point today. So it was obviously great to see Trinidad and Tobago get their first win. We had the placings today. It was a shame for Barbados to finish in 12th place, but unfortunately somebody does have to. And that obviously is in keeping with their world ranking. But one thing which has been talked a lot about, which Camilla alluded to there, is this huge disparity between the top nations and the lower nations in terms of their performance and resources. So, Lindsay, what do you think is the biggest priority or work on for the teams who are ranked below the top four?
I think that's a difficult one, considering we just come out of a 2.5-year pandemic. So I think places at Barbados had quite strict protocols, probably didn't get the access to high intensity netball compared to everybody else. I think if we look at performance via people like Wales, who came last time round in the last Commonwealth Games, who have now come, top 10, I think it's just a process of what has been able to for people to be able to access. So I think, unfortunately, Barbados were the ones to come last this time. But if you take Wales, for example, they've really turned it about. They've exposed more players to the Super League, and hopefully that's going to be the same for Barbados. Especially, I really enjoyed watching the goalkeeper, considering she had the hardest job out of everybody in the whole competition. She really didn't give up. She tried her hardest and kept performing to the best of her abilities. So, I think being exposed to this level of netball can only mean they can improve. And I think also, just on the basis that they have managed to still get themselves to the Commonwealth Games, considering that, they probably didn't think they were going if other teams who were ranked above them were still part of the Commonwealth. So, I think they did as well as they could. And places like Trinidad, Tobago are the same. They have a really strong Caribbean island cup. So hopefully they can re-establish that next year, and hopefully maybe be in a better position for the World Cup next year as well.
Yeah, and obviously all the teams will be looking at that World Cup as a big target, and particularly lots of the African nations. As we know, it's obviously the first time that the World Cup will be held in an African country. And we spoke to the Malawi head coach yesterday, and they were saying that they've got no league due to COVID. They've actually got no courts. Was that what you were saying, Luce?
There's no professional grade courts in the entire of Malawi. And I think it was the post-match interview today, actually. They were saying that, they're having to set them like home training programs. They only had, 10 days together, I think she said.
Yeah, prior to the event.
Yeah, it's crazy what they're having to contend with.
And when you consider that, and then how well they did it, in the end of the competition, I think it's just, we really want to see those lower ranked teams coming up and really challenging. And I think a lot of it is about that investment and how we get more money into the sport. And that's a question that we come back to often. So Karen or Camilla, whichever of you wants to speak, we wanted to know, how do we get more investment into the sport on a global scale? Karen, I'm going to make you answer it.
I think it's a really difficult one, and I have been thinking about it, since you sent a couple of the questions over yesterday. And I think this is a real difficult one because, the disparity across world netball is huge as we know it. We've got professional leagues running in Australia and New Zealand. We've got a semi-professional league running over here. And it's hard enough to attract sponsorship for our league that is semi-professional, that is attracting some of these top players from all over the world, let alone some of these lower nations trying to attract that kind of sponsorship. So for me, it's like, I think we have to look at IFNA, like what can they do? What can they do for our wonderful sport? Is there any initiatives that can be put out in the different regions of the world? Like, I don't know, there has to be some project that goes in off the back of this Commonwealth Games, I think, because what it's proven so far is that the netball world is turning upside down, and that is massive for our game to see teams beating other teams that, you know, hasn't happened before or rarely happened, and the potential that could bring to our game in the future. And I think it's something that the International Netball Federation has to take seriously and say, well, we've got a product here that is proving to be really exciting, and how can we sell this, and how can we get more money involved? And I'm not sure of the answers. I'm not obviously in those positions, but I do believe that IFNA have to take some kind of control on this.
Yeah, and how about you, Camilla?
Yeah, no, really good point, Kaz. And, you know, for me, I think it's one of those situations in it that isn't in it. Sorry, that sounded so common. that we found ourselves in with women's sport. And when you look across the different sports, when you look at what the Lionesses have just done, you know, they went professional a few years back, and look at the difference it's made. You throw some of investment into it. You give players the investment that they need, turn them professional, and look what can be achieved in such a short space of time. The fact that, Lucy, you talked about Malawi not having a single, you know, professional grade court, and they come in 7th in the world. Like, are you kidding me? You know, they've got, what have they got? They've got Joyce in our league. Loreen has played over here as well. Kamwendo obviously in SSN. Qtr obviously over here as well. So they've got 4 players kind of branched out into the professional leagues. But everybody else is back home in Malawi and doing it based off of, you know, with the resources that they've got. I think we've got to have a look at the investors. Who do we target? You know, I agree with Kaz. World Netball have got to really take the reins on this and try and get some big investments into this, because I think it's been proven that, you know, it works. You put money into something and the results will be there. And I think, you know, supporting things like the African Nations Cup, for example, or the Caribbean Cup, forgive me if that's not what it's officially called, but, you know, the competitions that are in, you know, different regions of the world, we've got to support those, give those more, get more eyes on those. So support the streaming, and just try to professionalize the way that it looks. You know, we're doing a job over here. You know, we've been working on this for as long as I've known. You know, we're getting there, but we've got to support the other nations to get the same kind of coverage, to get the same kind of investment. You know, we need coaches going into places to help support, you know, infrastructure and resources. You know, we talk about it not being about money all the time, but my goodness, money really does speak, because it allows people the freedom to be able to really put you know, their eggs in one basket. So yeah, it's not a quick fix, it's not an easy fix. I don't even know if that is the fix. I've not really given a solution, but it's, yeah, I think World Netball and this, you know, every region's got to do what it can to support those nations.
Yeah, and I think particularly the sort of more developed netball nations do need to take some of that responsibility as well, in terms of officiating training. You know, you can only be as good as your umpires and your coaches, and so all of that feeds into it as well. But one thing I wanted to pick up on, you mentioned the players there from Malawi who are playing in the VNSL and abroad. We know that you can have only players who are in a nation who's ranked in the top 12 to be signed in the Super League. So do we know if this is a league rule or a visa restriction? Perhaps, Karen, you might be best placed to answer this.
Yeah, it's a visa restriction. So that all comes down to the government and how England Netball and the government work together. So yeah, it's 100% a visa restriction.
That's disappointing. Go ahead, Karen.
Just to build on that. So as Kaz said, like apparently there are no rules in terms of that in the league. Anybody could play, but if you're looking outside the top 12, it's got to be somebody that's going to add value to our league, as opposed to, could it be a youth player coming through that could take that spot that would potentially be on the same level. So it's making sure it's kind of protecting that British employment side, I guess, in terms of overseas players having to add value. I know that New Zealand have got pretty strict rules on that as well, so just to agree with Kaz on that one.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting because it got me thinking about, wouldn't it be amazing if we could sign some American youngster who's going to be the next big thing, and then bring, you know, all of that fan base and following into coming into our league and what that would do. But obviously they're ranked so low that wouldn't be possible. And, you know, there's so many things that we've talked about before on previous podcasts about the visa restrictions that are put on our imports as well. And I'm sure we could do a whole nother episode talking about that topic. But Lindsay, I wanted to ask, is there any players from teams outside of the top four who you think from this Commonwealth Games that we might see in the VNSL in coming years?
I mean, there was plenty of talent on show. I was really impressed with the calibre of players from Uganda and from Malawi. And, you know, I think actually the openness of some of the homegrown players as well, some of the Scottish players, some of the Welsh players, it'd be good to see if they can get more exposure in other Super League teams as well. But yeah, I mean, there's rumour on the street that there's plenty of New Zealanders coming over to play in our Super League next year, so that will always be a winner. But I can't personally pick out one particular player, but I do think there's an array of talent that many coaches are going to be looking out for, and, you know, really making it competitive, especially for us players still who are competing for slots on teams. You know, you look at this, and I know I'm watching from times gone by of playing for England and going, oh my gosh, look at this talent. Like, you know, I'm really lucky to hopefully still be part of a Super League team. And, you know, you look at that, and I'm sure Karen and Camilla are looking at that going, well, I'd like to have you on my team. I'd like to have you and build that. But at the same point, like Camilla perfectly said, you've got to protect homegrown talent at the same time. You know, there's a reason why New Zealand only allow their players to play in the New Zealand League to be picked for the Silver Ferns. So I think there has to be a fine balance between all of that. So as much as it's amazing to have all of this talent, sort of like a shopping list, but there is got to be a balance between how many do you pick and who do you ask and what is their job to, you know, develop English players as well as English players having the opportunity to develop themselves.
Yeah, absolutely, Lindsay. And I'm sure there's other barriers as well. You can't just pick someone up from the other side of the world and bring them over here to come and play in the league, you know, willy-nilly. They have to move their whole life and their family and everything. So, Karen, what are those kind of barriers that might mean you're really interested in a player to sign them, but there's various reasons why you can't follow through with that?
I think overall, obviously, it's the background where they come from, what the commitments are back home. Obviously, I mean, you look at Joyce Mvula, who's been a real success story for us. You know, she's been part of Manchester Thunder for 6 seasons, and wish her all the luck in the world heading over to New Zealand. But when Joyce first came over, and we were kind of talking to her and asking what her basic requirements were as an athlete, and she wanted a toilet and a kettle, and that was it. And I think that kind of sums up where some of these athletes are coming from and what they have available to them in the countries. So, you know, some of them, you know, have got families. Joyce has got a little boy. That potentially could have been a barrier for her. You know, and I think these players jump at the opportunity because they see it as being able to provide a better life, not only for themselves, but for their families back home, wherever they come from, as well as, you know, gaining new life experiences for themselves. And, you know, it is a great opportunity for these athletes. And, you know, I was so proud of the athlete that Joyce has become over the last 6 years. And in terms of barriers, I don't think there probably are all that many barriers other than, obviously, the family, the monetary. Can they get out of work if some of them are working? And obviously the visa restrictions around that as well. But, I mean, I think if you keep your ears close to the ground, I've heard a lot of rumours already. So the sooner England Netball open their announcement window, the better, because I think there's certainly going to be some exciting signings coming from other Super League teams this season.
Yeah, the rumour mill is churning away, I have to say, and has been for quite some time as well. And we're going to move on now to talk about some of the key pool matches. But thanks, guys, for your insight on that, especially from a Super League perspective. So we've had some absolutely fantastic matches in the pool stages so far, particularly the recent games. We saw Scotland really challenging South Africa in that first half. A great tussle between Malawi and Uganda as well. But we're going to be highlighting 3 of the biggest pool matches. Firstly, Australia versus Jamaica, unsurprisingly. And this was an absolutely fascinating game and just a huge win for Jamaica. It's the first time they've beaten Australia at Commonwealth Games. And I really think that no matter how things go in the semi-finals and onwards, they can take so much pride from that performance and what they put out there. On the flip side, from an Australian perspective, this is the first time they've ever lost a pool game in the Commonwealth and has thrown up a lot of questions. Netball Scoop actually put a tweet out saying, once known for their prowess at finishing games strongly, in 4 of their past 5 matches against a top 5 opposition at major tournaments, Australia has been outscored in the last quarter. So what do you guys think was the main game-changing factor in this game, particularly in that last quarter, which Jamaica won 17-9? Camilla, I'll come to you first.
Oh, well, where do we start? I mean, firstly, I think we've got to talk about the fact that, everyone's kind of poo-pooing Australia a little bit in terms of, they're not as strong and this and that. I think that's almost a little bit of a disrespect to the other nations. I think that we're seeing a very different Jamaica, or a Jamaica that's kind of coming into their, their ability. And I think that it's about time. And I think everybody is in agreement with that it's about time that World Netball was shaken up and that we've got, other people really contending for those top spots. But I think you've got to look at, I've seen some really interesting things said on social media. I think, one of the things around Super Netball, whether or not that's been detrimental to the game. I saw something around the fact that, these Australian players haven't played a solid 15 minutes for how long? Because, with Super Netball, you've got the stoppages and, the fluidity of the game. How much are they able to figure things out within a 15 minutes versus having a stoppage and getting input from a coach? So I think that that's a really valid point. And I just think that, they lacked variety. The Australian attack end, they lost their movement. I think that they were really missing something in the midcourt. I know there was a load of discussion around the Australian selection, and for me that midcourt, I know that they've unfortunately lost Paige Hadley, but I think in that midcourt there's just not enough variety. We talk about Liz Watson, Kate Maloney, and Ash Brazil. For me, they're missing a Kelsey Brown kind of power in there, or a Maddie Proud. I know that's a little bit controversial with the Kelsey Brown thing, but for me that there's just no variety. I mean, when you look at the England centre court, which I actually, I'll eat my words on this one. I was a little bit concerned about our mid-court going into this competition, but wow, they've shut up some critics in terms of the versatility. They've really used it, and the way that they've used the mid-court bench has just been exceptional. And I just think that Australia haven't had that. So I think that, that's one thing in terms of the Australian team. And then Jamaica, when you look at that defence end, I mean, the attack end, I think that's one thing. You've got Janelle Fowler, who is one of the best, potentially the best shooter in the world. With Shanice Beckford, who is totally gone under the radar, I think, in terms of this competition. She's just been so solid, so consistent and available and effective. But that attack end has just worked. But when you look down the other end, you've got Jodie Ann Ward, Latanya Wilson, Shamira Sterling. Like those guys, they didn't top the stats list in the SSN for no reason. They're match winners, they're ball winners. And when you come up against a side that can turn that amount of ball over, you've got a centre court that's actually playing some really smart netball, and then you've got someone that finishes the other end with an Australian side that doesn't have, I don't think, the amount of answers that Jamaica do on the bench. For me, that that was. I don't know if I've answered the question, but I think that Jamaica just turned the screw and Australia had no answers.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you on that. And particularly in relation to Shanice Beckford. And she actually shot 100%, 10 from 10 in that game, 18 goal assists and 28 centre pass receives, plus Phenomenal. A few defensive stats as well to her name. She had an absolute stonker. And Karen, were you going to say something there as well about that game?
Yeah, obviously I agree with everything that Cam's just said. And I think, some of the key points you need to look at is this Jamaica side hasn't been able to probably back themselves for 60 minutes solid for a few years now. And I think the fact that these players are playing out in the SSN and getting that full-time professional program, you know, that conditioning, they're able to back themselves for 60 minutes. And I think that was the key thing yesterday, in the fact that that defensive circle got the better of a world-class shooting circle. For me, Gretel Boetta is one of the best shooters in the world, and when she's on form, she is unplayable. And I actually think Shamira Sterling took her out of it yesterday. I would have liked to have seen a change in that shooting circle. I would have liked to have seen Boetta potentially go out to goal attack, and whether that's just flipping her and Steph Wood around, or whether it would be putting a Conan in just to mix it up. But I really think that circle just got a little bit stagnant in that last quarter, and Jamaica just got on top of them, and the fact that they could do that for the full 60 minutes, which I don't believe they've been able to do previously, I think is key. I read an article that Nat Medhurst wrote, I don't know who it was for, today, and she spoke around, you know, some of these people that are kicking off saying, oh, the Suncorp is not helping the Australian players, and her argument, which I think is a very, very valid point, was, well, it's helping the rest of the players from around the world, so it should be helping our own as well.
Yeah.
You know, and that for me is a key point.
Yeah, absolutely, Karen, 100%. And Lucy, I think we've had something in on the hashtag about this.
Yeah, so shout out to Sarah Quinn. She said the game-changing factor for Jamaica yesterday was putting Ward into wing defence and Khadija Williams on at wing attack, who returned to that position in the fourth quarter, providing mid-court power to match the bookends. They worked for that win regardless of the Aussie performance. And I think, Karen, you've already answered this one. There's a question from Amy who said, if you were the coach of Australia, would you have made that big injury change in the final 15 once they started losing, just to see how the other players would handle the pressure? So I'm going to throw that listener question over to, who should I go for? Look at Lindsay. If you're a coach, would you have made a change?
Oh, yes. But I think like just as Camilla said, there's just no impact player for that to happen on the bench, because I just think, you know, they needed someone like Paige Hadley, who's probably the most different compared to Maloney and Watson. And I think actually, you know, credit due to Jamaica, like Rob has done a fantastic job with them. He's really implemented how Australia played, and you know, it can't just be down to them not just being phenomenal athletes, but also brains behind all of that as well, because you know they've been that brilliant for years. You know, I remember my World Youth Champs against Janelle Romelda. We got beat and we came fourth because they beat us in the bronze medal match. So you know, they've always been phenomenal athletes, and I think you know, if I was a coach, I probably would just, I don't know. It depends. I suppose a lot of people were questioning whether or not a pool match was really worth it. You know, you're going to play all top four teams anyway, so it doesn't matter which order you play them in. So I suppose it depends if you are trying to bleed players. Are you trying to expose them, get them so they're not as nervous as if they were going to be in a semi-final? So yeah, probably actually it was probably a good move that they threw them on and let them feel that, rather than getting to a semi-final being in exactly the same predicament and them having absolutely zero knowledge or understanding of that sort of high level intensity game, especially because, you know, it's been a long time since we've had the World Cup in England. So, you know, it's 3 years since they've had really, really high level sort of must win feelings and gold medal in contention. You know, we're not lucky enough to be in the Olympics. So this is our highest level honour. And yeah, I just think, why not? I don't know if that's the right or wrong approach. I don't know. I mean, if I was a player, I'd be really grateful that I'd be given that opportunity, because, you know, often as a player you get thrown about, oh, well, we didn't put you on because we don't think you've got enough experience. And actually, if you are being thrown on, you no longer have that excuse in the future. So, yeah, as a player, I'd be selfishly going, yes, please put me on.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. And I think it's so interesting to see the different approaches taken by the coaches throughout the pool stages. And when we got to the sort of the big end of the pool stages, which was obviously those matches yesterday. And it was interesting. Sarah Clow was brought on in the last, she played 4 minutes at the end to come on and win the game. And it seemed just bizarre to have her coming on so late in the day. And, you know, Aussies, the Stacey Marankovic has spoken a lot about the versatility in her squad, but most of them, I'm just looking now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them played for 60 minutes. And there was really, you know, she didn't make any tactical changes at all. But Karen or Camilla, I'll come to you about how do you know as a coach when the time is to make that change and pull that trigger? Is it do you just get a feel for it on the game?
I think there comes a point in the game where you know you have to shift momentum, and whether that's a substitution or a change or a positional change or a positional switch. So you're just changing up the style of play. And that's a message that you need to get out to the players, or the players take that responsibility themselves. I think you feel it. There's always that momentum shift. And I think with a team like Jamaica, having played against them and having watched them, they're a team that thrive on confidence. We've got teams like it in the Super League, and you cannot give them an in. You give them an in, and they're going to fly. So I think if you feel that point where there is an in, that at that point there has to be something that changes, something that gives. It would have been nice to maybe get Ash Braz in the centre. I know Camilla mentioned, that something different in that centre court. Could they have put Ash Braz in the middle and put Weston on the wing, with Clow? I really rate Clow. If they wanted to make that change, make it earlier, get Bruce out, get Weston across, get Braz forward. But I really think that there should have been that change in the shooting circle at that point as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Those big arms of Joe Weston. Yeah, go ahead, Camilla.
Sorry, no, I was just going to add to that. I mean, it's really interesting watching the coaches and how they make those changes. I mean, one thing, Kaz, for you, for example, this season, I obviously watched you very closely, and yourself with Thunder, and you guys would sometimes make changes when you were 10 up, but you felt a momentum shift happening against you guys. You'd make a change when you were 10 up, as opposed to waiting until dying moments or when it was too late. And it's really interesting, like Australia making that change in the last 4 minutes. I mean, I really don't understand that one. But then you look at Jamaica, who just to reference the tweet that you guys just got about taking Khadija off, you put Adine Thomas in, who again has been pretty impactful. I think that they've worked their bench really well, and they've got a strong bench, Jamaica, for the first time, I think. So that they took Khadija off, gave us some information, injected her back in, and I just think that the ways in which Connie has kind of managed that has been, I think also Jess Thirlby has managed her bench fantastically well. So it's just really interesting looking at coaches that are potentially in a more comfortable position and how they're using their benches versus those that are potentially kind of clawing and not to, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but just almost what have I got next? Very interesting to watch.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You said that actually, Camilla. When we spoke with Sonia McCloma after the New Zealand-England game, which we'll come on to next, she said that they knew exactly what all of their impact changes were going to do, and they knew when they needed to inject them, and they went out and did that job. And so they'd already done, the pre-work to know those rotations in the earlier pool stages and to see what the players can do. And they feel like the England squad, it feels like they really know the players and they know exactly what they're going to get. And those players are going to be reliable, or they're going to inject some pace, or they're going to be really good at tracking, and they know their specific skills that they're going to bring. So moving on to talk a little bit then about that New Zealand-England game. I mean, the first thing to mention, I think, is probably the atmosphere in the arena, which was absolutely insane. I thought I was going to have a heart attack at several points during that game. I've never felt that. It's actually even better, I think, than the World Cup. There seems to just be this incredible amount of belief that the group can actually do it. So what did you all make of that game, and who stood up for you from an England perspective? Lindsay, I'll come back to you.
Well, I think Imogen Allison had an amazing impact on that court. Her chase down of that tip and everything like that. It's just phenomenal for someone who, was always training and, ready in the wings for any emergencies, has stepped up tremendously to the top 12. I think Eleanor Cardwell's done a fantastic job at goal shooter. I think Helen Housby has been absolutely phenomenal. Like, she's taken on everything that she's done this season from the SSN. Oh, sorry, guys. To now, and I've just been so impressed by all of them. And I think, we were really showing that we've got a strong 12 side, and I genuinely believe it will be the team that has the best 12 that wins the games rather than a straight 7. So I think England are still my hot favourite for gold. My prediction way back when, you can ask a few fellow netballers that went out for dinner with the Commonwealth Games, I predicted that Jamaica and England would be the gold medal match, and I think I might be right.
Wow, you should have put money on that, Linz. I think that probably would have been a good bet.
I know. I have three witnesses though. I was like Amanda Newton, Lindsay Armitage, and Vicky Diss. Both, all three of them, are witnesses. So yeah, we said England and Jamaica is the gold medal match, but fingers crossed it will come true.
No, I really hope so too. That would be an absolute dream for me. Karen, go on. What were you about to say?
I thought Jiva was phenomenal at the start of that game yesterday. The way she played Grace Nweke, and we all know Grace in the coming years is going to be a phenomenal fern, and she's going to be there for a long time. And I think the way that Jiva played her and put that pressure on her, got into her head early, did the old famous Jiva back roll into backspace to win ball off her. I just thought she got in there early, and I think Jiva's probably been a bit quiet in some of the previous matches or grown into the games as they've gone along, but I thought she really hit the ground running last night, and I think set the tone from the back straight away. I think Helen stepped up. I think there's been, again, quite quiet at times, and it's one of them, isn't it? Because I know how hard it is in tournaments like this when you're playing in nations that sit below you in the ranks, and you're putting a lot of goals on. It's hard to get yourself at that level and firing and where you need to be. So for me to see players yesterday like Jiva really step up from that first minute, and I think Helen absolutely knocked it out the park yesterday in the way that she took responsibility and how she connected with both Eleanor and Jo. I think we saw when Jess made that change at half-time to bring Jo on. Jo actually didn't have a shot for quite a few minutes, and it was Helen taking that responsibility. But there was a lot of playmaking going on there between them, and then to re-inject Eleanor back in, I thought it worked really, really nicely. And I think Lindsay touched on, obviously, the impact that Imogen made at wing defence. I think the energy that Laura brought into that centre position. I think it was just really exciting to see those players. They looked after each other. They had each other's backs. They carried each other through the game, and that excitement was there. I don't think New Zealand will be happy with the performance, and I don't think they'll take it lying down either. I think they're definitely going to come back fighting tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
They did look at times lethargic and a bit shell-shocked by what England was throwing at them. So it'll have been interesting to see what Noeline Taurua has done today in this 24 hours to get them ready for Jamaica tomorrow, because that's playing against a firing Jamaica team. That's a scary thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there isn't really a good option in the semi-finals. There's nobody that you actually want to face. And I think what's interesting there, Karen, is you basically mentioned everyone in the team, and I think that's really telling. And we haven't even touched on Nat Metcalf as well, who is absolutely outstanding. And that's the thing for me with this England side, is there's no weak link, there's nobody who's not doing their job. Everyone just goes out there and absolutely gives 100%. And I mean, some of the stats are absolutely incredible. And it was interesting you picked up on Jo Harton coming on. That was really interesting, that shift. And it almost felt like Jo was doing quite a lot of dummy work and a lot of screening. And do you think that was a tactical injection by Jess, because Helen was firing and she wanted to keep that momentum as well? Camilla, what do you think about that change?
Yeah, I think it's always really interesting, isn't it, when you've got someone as dominant as Helen, and do you wait for them to kind of hit a bit of a wall and for the opposition to have figured some things out, or do you kind of get ahead of the game and make that change? And as you said, kind of Jo was acting, a bit of a decoy, and it really gave them something to think about in terms of, opening up that circle. And I just love that versatility that we've got. I think that, the way that Helen and Jo link together versus Eleanor and Helen, it does give us something different. So yeah, I think that was pretty smart. I don't think it was an accident that was made to kind of free up Helen a little bit more, and just kind of spread the New Zealand defence, because you think about Eleanor in there, she doesn't exit a massive amount. When she does, it's her angles are a little bit tighter, whereas Jo can go a little bit flatter. She might change the angle, come out a bit further, so it just starts to pull the New Zealand defenders into positions that they don't want to be in, because typically they like to work together. They like an off-marking kind of setup, and if you get into certain positions that Joe gets into, you're going to get blind spots, you're going to open up gaps that Helen can attack and Nat Metcalf can thread through. So I do think that was purposeful, and if it wasn't, it was unknowing genius.
Yeah, no, completely agree with you on that. And then looking a bit more closely at New Zealand, obviously there was a lot of talk around their selection, the trials process, the fitness standards, which meant that some players, who previously have been selected weren't selected for this competition. Thinking about people like Ekenasio, obviously they've had some injuries as well. Do you think that lack of personnel was the main reason they lost in this game, or was it the execution of those players? I'll come back to you, Lindsay.
Oh, brilliant, because I actually was really fortunate to play New Zealand in 2 Commonwealth Games on behalf of us. So we got invited up to Colchester to play them, and they were really hard to play against. I genuinely think the reason they sort of didn't step up to England, I just don't think they've found their fifth gear yet. They're a very fit team. They are very good at what they do, but I just don't think they've actually been pushed it, and actually playing England will wake them up. I think we'll have the same sort of sleeping giants that we did 4 years ago, and they'll be an absolute threat when it comes to the World Cup next year. Perhaps not again for the Commonwealth Games, but Nolene's always got a plan, and it's definitely something, that isn't just going to be, like they say, Rome isn't going to be built in a day. So I think New Zealand team is kind of like that, and they'll use this tournament to have more players and a bigger depth and breadth of players for next year. And yeah, unfortunately, I think it was a real shame that Ekenasio wasn't given another couple of weeks, because I think after watching her in the Cadbury series, she was really starting to get there, and she is a phenomenal woman to come back after 2 babies and be still playing the highest level possible. I think that's outstanding, and I think New Zealand are really missing her. And there's a few others. I was quite shocked at some of the other mid-courts at work that didn't make it. So yes, Sam Winders was one that I thought was going to get into the squad and didn't. So I think New Zealand are probably playing it cool, staying in a 4th gear. Probably need to have a little bit more push, and I think playing Jamaica will be really good for them, because they're both very tall players. I felt very small in the game against them.
You felt small. Imagine how I feel interviewing them, Lindsay. It's ridiculous.
Lucy, you'd need to get Yellow Pages out, honestly. They were giant, but I think they might come into their own. I think being defeated by England is no mean feat, but I think playing Jamaica will be a really well contested match again. I think it'll be very, very close.
Yeah, I think everyone's really looking forward to both of those semi-finals. It's hard to pick which one I want to watch more, actually. I can't wait to watch them. And we'll move on to just quickly discuss one more of the pool matches before we take a closer look at those semi-finals that we've mentioned. So it's just the South Africa and Uganda match today. I don't think we can overlook that. It was the last game of the day. It was an amazing atmosphere in the arena and a massive, massive effort from Uganda to get over the line. They were down in the first quarter and they came back. And I mean, South Africa, I really just think that they had no answers today. They had obviously an injury to Lefebvre Radaman, which was devastating to see, but they just looked lost and like they were just floundering. There wasn't as much structure. We know they're missing a couple of key players as well in Potgieter and in Carla Pretorius. But how significant do you think this result will be for both teams, particularly ahead of the World Cup next year? Karen, I'll come back to you for this one.
I think it's going to give South Africa a massive, massive shake-up. For me, they got opportunity today. I thought there was definitely opportunity in that 3rd and 4th quarter where they could have pulled that back and taken the game. And I just think there was a little bit of naivety around that attacking 3rd line, around the circle edge, which just gave Uganda that in. And, for me, there was just some sloppy decisions, some sloppy passes. Obviously, it's easy to look at missed shots, but there was a couple of missed shots. And I just think they're not going to be happy with that at all. I think, they're bedding in some good, exciting young players. I think you look at Nicola Smith, you look at Van der Berg, and I'm sure we'll probably see them in the Super League next year somewhere. And I think I think what they've got coming through is exciting. I think if you can get Pretorius back and Potgieter back, that definitely gives them that added experience and depth with those youngsters. And I think they're going to be heavily focused now. I know they've got a bit of a camp stroke full-time program going on from pretty much when they get back. So they've got African Cup of Nations at the end of this month, I think it is. They've got camp throughout September, bit of a rest in October, and then there's the potential, I think, in November of playing some international matches before the quad in January. So they've got a real heavy period now where they're going to have to go back to the drawing board, get those players back into camp if they can, those experienced players, and really get them working with these exciting youngsters that are coming through. They're definitely not going to be happy. But, for Uganda, I look at Uganda and it's been said, how exciting that they're able to do what they're able to do with the limited resources that they've got, and just imagine what they would be capable of if they had more. I've been impressed with them all series. I think when they played against New Zealand earlier on in the round, I thought they played possession really nicely and just sliced open the New Zealand defence just at the right time. So they're showing some real signs of intelligent play, and I think they warrant that 5th place finish.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And that possession play was really impressive from Uganda, particularly today. South Africa were finding it really difficult to win ball off them. They threw a number of different defensive combinations out there. We saw Shadeen going back to goal defence. I think we had another goal defence. Oh, yes, Ben Bella was there previously in the game. And they just didn't really have that answer in the defence. But they were actually called for a lot of penalties. So just looking at the stats now, 70 contact penalties, 7-0 for South Africa and 41 for Uganda. So it was a very, very physical game. We've seen a lot of warnings and cautions be handed out, and there were a lot handed out in this game. Do you think that, Camilla, South Africa were overly physical to try and compensate for not winning enough ball?
I don't think so. I don't think any more than anybody else. I think that, the calls did come thick and fast today, but I wouldn't say that there was any more in it than there have been. The Malawi-Uganda game was really physical. I think that's certainly been a theme across the board. But in terms of compensating, I mean, was it a little bit of desperation potentially? But that's where I think that, picking up on Kaz's point, it's, for me, what they're missing is that experience. We know that it's a pretty young kind of shooting circle, and Ina Marie's kind of really stepping up into that kind of starting goal shooter position, and really learning how to lead that attack end. So I think that they certainly missed out on some experience in there, even though there are plenty of players in there that could do that. So yeah, potentially a little bit of desperation. But again, you've got to look at the performance that Uganda put out against them. And I know that we often look at the losing team as the ones that didn't do so great, but for me, it was the fact that Uganda did so well. And Mary Chollock was fantastic. I mean, I know that she's got a massive kind of height advantage, but you've got to look at that unit around her. Irene Ayaru, I think she's been brilliant this whole tournament. And Stella Oyelowo, she's actually one of my favorites. You talked about kind of players in the lower nations, if we're going to see them in the next few years. I really hope that Stella Oyelowo gets picked up. She's a fantastic centre court who does kind of cross over into goal attack as well. I remember her from the World Cup in Liverpool, and she was, she wowed me then as well. But I just think that attack unit was played some really intelligent netball. Defensively they got on with their job, and just as Kaz said, South Africa just didn't have the answers.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And actually, Stella Oyelowo had some fantastic stats. 29 feeds into the circle, 23 centre pass receives. She played the whole 60 minutes and was just instrumental in the patience that they showed on the court today. And particularly as well, goal attack for Uganda, Irene Ayaru, she shot 88%, which is absolutely outstanding, and put up 21 goals. So it wasn't
That's good volume.
Yes, massive. It wasn't even that South Africa could just double back on Choluk, because they had this goal attack wreaking havoc everywhere around. So it was a very, very challenging day at the office for South Africa. And any final thoughts on this game? We're going to move on. I'm just conscious of time, and we've still got the old semi-finals to discuss. But any other thoughts on this game, particularly in relation to the World Cup next year for South Africa?
I was just, I mean, you know, having a game on games on on your own turf. Sorry, I'll get my words out in a minute.
Yeah.
You know, we know from having the World Cup here and comms here now how much of a home advantage it can be. So, you know, I think South Africa will look very different next year. I think having it on home soil will provide a very different environment for them. So yeah, I don't think it's going to have a massive impact, but you know, it will be a stinging South Africa that comes into the World Cup next year.
Yeah, and hopefully, obviously, that new programme that they've just launched, which you mentioned, Karen, that will have obviously been in place for a full year by that time. So hopefully we'll see a very different South Africa. It would be a real shame for them not to make the semi-finals in a home World Cup. But at the moment, with how things are looking, it could be a very tricky one. Obviously, the Jamaica versus New Zealand semi-final is the one coming up first tomorrow morning at 9 a.m, I believe. A bit of an early start.
Yeah, I think so.
Is it 9 a.m?
I'll double check.
Oh, I wish it was a bit later. I could do
It's definitely 9 a.m.
It is 9 a.m. Thank you for confirming there, Karen. So obviously that is going to be a fiery matchup, as we've mentioned. And we're going to come back to you, Lindsay. Which players do you think will match up very well in that game, the Jamaica versus New Zealand semi?
I mean, I'm really intrigued to see Shamira up against Grace. I think that's going to be amazing. Two very phenomenal young athletes. That's really exciting. And actually to see how Kelly Jury stands up against Janelle, I think they're both very athletic teams. I think the mid-court will be phenomenal for the attack and on the Jamaica side. And, you know, the New Zealand have their very unique style of defending still. Like their zone has been apparent in many teams, actually. A lot of teams have taken on board the New Zealand style of zoning. So hopefully they can get that under wraps. But my most interesting thing is goalkeepers, both ends for both teams, about how they're going to shape up against two very impressive goal shooters.
Do we think, just as a question, do you think that they're going to start with Grace? I'm just wondering if, I mean, obviously she's done great. I'm just wondering from a tactical point of view, Kaz, you know, your input as well on this one. You know, a Maya Wilson, a Selby Rickett kind of circle versus a Grace Nweke who's going to play into Shamira's strengths. Maya Wilson, obviously, we know that she needs to be in there. Would you go with a Grace Nweke start, or would you go for potentially a moving circle to try and get that Jamaican circle heads turning?
I personally would go Maya Wilson and probably Selby Rickett at goal attack with Maya at goal shooter. I think if New Zealand can get Maya firing, they can get ball to her. You know, she's happy to shoot from anywhere, and I think if they can settle those kind of nerves early doors, then there could be potential to then bring Grace into the game and impact. I think we saw Grace against Jiva yesterday, and she struggled in that first quarter. I felt Jiva got into her head a little bit, and I think, you know, the potential is there with that experience of Shamira to do the same. So I personally, I mean, I'm not Nolene, and she's amazing. But yeah, I personally would probably go with a Maya Selby Rickett, a Wilson Selby Rickett circle tomorrow to start.
Yeah, interesting.
Camilla, do you agree?
Well, I that's something, again, I'm not in the camp with them. I would certainly need to give that shooting circle something different to think about. I think Maya Wilson can hold a similar amount. I suppose she holds it in a different way, but I think that she can. Sorry, I did say Maya. She can hold the same kind of space, but she also offers you, you know, a bit of movement, a bit of, you know, a bit of coming together and overloading, which Selby Rickett and her can provide. But I think it's going to be the other end and how they play that as well, in terms of, you know, do they go Kelly Jury, Sulu, and Kayla, or do they put Karaka in there to kind of create more of an off-marking defensive line and try and win ball earlier? Because I think that we all know what's going to happen once it's at the end. So, you know, so do New Zealand go for their for their bread and butter, which is their best in the world when it's on fire, is their off marking zone. Do they go for that, or do they stick with Kelly Jury in the back, hope that she can really put Janelle off her game and get the guys working in front of her? But I think that kind of back end is going to be key as well. I mean, where do you attack Jamaica, right? Where do you attack them?
I think you've got to break down the centre court, haven't you? Like, that's where you're going to kind of say, you highlight the weak area. And for me, Jamaica are a scary thought anyway. I don't think there are many weak areas. How often do they come up against a zone defence? That's very rare that they're going to have. Some of those players will have experienced that. We've seen in the past Jamaica throw a lot of ball away. Can New Zealand create those opportunities to get lift? We know Jamaica play a lifted game. They have athletes. They can jump. They can run. They're phenomenal athletes. They like to put ball in the air. If that ball's in the air, we know New Zealand are a team that are going to come fly for it. They're going to set up that split circle, or they're going to take out that middle channel and have players like Jury flying, Fitzpatrick flying, Heffernan flying. I love Heffernan, by the way. I think she's world class. I think she's going to be amazing.
Agreed.
And I think if they can get the structure right against a Jamaica centre court, they could force Jamaica into errors. So it'll be interesting to see, what that looks like and the decisions around selection.
It's just to back on. So I know we're probably running out of time, guys, but just my last point on that one. The thing with that, Kaz, and I agree with you on all those points, is that Jamaica then have the bench to be able to inject stuff. So you start with the Khadija Williams and Nicole Dixon, that you put an off-marking zone against them. But then, if you were to shift the Dean Thomas in there, who's going to cut through a zone, they've got the bench to be able to break things down. So tactically, I'm really looking forward to seeing how the coaches play this game.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you both on all of those points. I think it's going to be a fascinating matchup. And interesting you mentioned there about the errors, Karen. So in match play errors, Jamaica are actually third in the competition behind Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago for match play errors and handling errors. I believe they're also in the top 4 for footwork as well. So if they can force those early in the game and build a big lead, then potentially New Zealand could be in with a big shout. But obviously that's just one of the semi-finals that we're going to be treated to tomorrow. And the other one is just a little matchup between England and Australia. So I'm going to come back to you, Lindsay. Who do you think is going to be critical in this matchup, and which way do you think it's going to go?
Well, I'm backing England the whole way. I definitely think if we don't get too overwhelmed with the pressure of being gold medalists 2 times in a row, and to make sure that we can deliver on such a high platform at home, as well as having history on our side, are definitely backing England. I think I think Australia will be slightly burnt at the fact that they will come out absolutely guns blazing, and we don't want to be chasing the Australian fast pace. We want to be playing our own game at our own speed and dictating to them and starving them of the ball and making sure that we deliver and no errors. And we were a little bit errorsome against New Zealand. I think some moments where we had miscommunications, eye contact, and a few balls went out of play. I think if we can stop those from happening and keep our slip game and almost sort of have ultimate control over the game, England will definitely deliver the punch and unfortunately put Australia in a bronze position match, which I don't think they've been for many years. I think if England can deliver that, it'll be really interesting to see who Jess picks in which area. I think some positions will be a dead set. I think Layla and Jiva will definitely be the goalkeeper, goal defence, but I think a few other positions will be definitely up for grabs for some of the amazing performances we've seen across the whole 12. So I'm really intrigued to see where Jess goes. I don't know if Karen or Camilla has any better insight to what they think, but I definitely think Helen Howes will be goal attack, Nat Haytham will be wing attack, Jade is looking quite likely at centre, and definitely Layla and Jiva. So I think those 5 are secure, but whether we put who at wing defence or centre or goal shoot, I think that will be the interesting throw of the dice for England. But I think anyone who they put on is going to deliver, because I think they're going to be up for it, and I think they're going to do a great job.
Yeah, Karen or Camilla, any thoughts on that lineup? And do you think Jess will stick with the 7 or inject some of those other players like we've seen her do?
Go on.
It'll be very, very interesting, to be honest. I think, we know that Joe and Helen have got that experience of playing against the Aussies week in, week out, being able to play against that pressure. We've obviously seen Eleanor play at the Quad Series against Australia, and I'd say, as a massive, obviously, Eleanor Cardwell fan, I think she was probably hit and miss. I think she had an outstanding game in one game and then not so in the next. So it will be interesting to see how, what decisions Jess makes around. I think we all are aware that Jo isn't fully fit. We've seen by the way she's moving and things like that. So will she continue to use Jo as that impact player just to shift dynamics in the circle and actually start Eleanor? We know she'll shoot from anywhere. I think she has to start with Jade in the middle, to be honest. I think, if they're going to go Kate Maloney middle, which they likely are, I think we have to go Jade. I think Jade can nullify that threat of Kate Maloney 100%. And, obviously Jiva and Layla have got a task on their hands because, I think Steph Wood coming out of an SSM where I wouldn't have thought that was probably her best netball. I think she's really coming to her own in this Commonwealth Games. I think, we've seen her more creative side again. And I think, say if we let Gretel Boetta settle, she potentially is unplayable. So we have to nail that attacking end early. And I think Jiva and Layla are the ones to do that. I think Layla's a huge threat. For me, it's that wing defence position. Who's going to take that? I think, I have a feeling that Jess may go for Stacey. I personally, again, unbiased but biased, would go for Laura. But yeah, I mean, I'm just super excited to see how that pans out tomorrow.
Yeah, and you, Camilla, any final thoughts on this before we do your predictions?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to go Eleanor Helen. I think that's a must start. I totally agree with Jade Clark. She's just been unbelievable. I think I said in our last podcast, guys, that I would go with a Laura Malcolm centre. I said that she should be the starting centre. Well, I'll also eat my words on that one because Jade Clark has been outstanding this competition. I mean, we always knew that she delivers at big competitions, but the way that she's holding that unit together, and then for me, Stacey Francis Bayman, I think she's living her best life at the moment. I feel like she's not got enough credit this Con Games. I know, like at the beginning, everyone was singing and dancing, but I agree. Laura Malcolm's on fire, but I love her as an impact, and I just think that the range that Stacey, Layla, and Jiva cover, when I look at that lineup going up against Liz, Steph, and Gretel, that excites me, and I think with the changes that we can implement, was Stacey? Yeah, she. I don't think I can't remember if she matched up against Liz in the SSN final, but obviously, that's a connection that those guys have got. So I would go with a Francis Bayman, Gusgoth, and Mentor start, and I think that your Malcolms and Allisons can impact at any point, and certainly using Jo as an impact player as well. But for me, that matchup in terms of the midcourt, I think that Layla Gusgoth can totally shut down Steph Wood, and if she does that and isolates Boetta, then we're in for business, because I think that our attack end will deal with the likes of Clow, Weston, or Bruce.
Yeah, well, it certainly will be very interesting. We'd love to hear your thoughts as well, lovely listeners. So do use the hashtag #B2022netball. So we've run a little bit over time, so apologies. I know it is late on a Friday evening and people have probably got Wetherspoons to go to and stuff like that. But before we wrap up, I just wanted to do a few quick predictions. So bronze, silver and gold. And this is a rapid fire, everyone. So Lindsay, coming back to you first, bronze, silver and gold medals. Who do you think it's going to be?
I think bronze will be Australia. I think silver will be Jamaica, and England will be gold.
Love that. Karen, next.
England, Jamaica, and Australia.
Yeah. And you, Camilla?
Gold, silver, bronze order, not the other way.
Oh, you're asking me now. Now, see, See, this is a tough one, because I think that, oh gosh, I know we're running out of time. I also think Australia will get the bronze medal. Now, this gold and silver, this is a heartstrings one, because England, there's so many like heartfelt connections here. But I've also got my Jamaican roots that I absolutely, when I saw that Jamaican win yesterday, I cannot tell you what it does. I mean, for everybody, regardless of whether you've got Jamaican blood or not. So for me, this is a really tough one, because I think the Jamaican side have got what it takes to take gold. But I also think England have got what it takes to take gold. Oh man, I don't know if I can actually answer that question. That's a real tough one. The heart lies between them both. I mean, obviously the biggest connections are with the England girls. I know a lot of them personally, but Jamaica as well. I've got a bit of a green, yellow, and black heart. So, I'm going to sit on the fence for that one. Sit on the fence for that one.
I hope you don't
get
a
your
sore
splinters out, Camilla. Get the splinters out.
Oh, thank you so much, you guys, for your predictions. Yeah, I have to agree. I think that I'm hoping that England will beat Australia in the semis. I've got this fear because of the trauma of the 2019 World Cup, when we all thought this was going to be it and we're going to do it, and then it didn't happen in the semis. But if we can get through the semis, I think that the crowd will pull us through for the final. But I would be equally happy with Jamaica taking home those gold medals, because what it would do for the sport back in Jamaica would just be incredible for the global netball scene as well. I really think it would be a real turning point and a catalyst for some really big change. So wow, thank you guys so much. This has been a really, really fascinating conversation, and really appreciate your time. Thank you also to everyone for tuning in. I'm sorry we've gone a little bit over time, but I'll leave you all to get on with your dinner now. And massive thank you to our speakers as well.
Thanks, guys. Amazing
Thanks
work.
for having us.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Enjoy the weekend, everyone. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Thank
Set
you,
your alarms
guys.
early doors.
And yeah, thanks so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the games. Take care.